All right, let's just start. So, as we know, like when we've been a part of cybersecurity team and working to provide security to IT assets. So, the most important part of this is to get understand what are the differences and what are the operations are there. This is the most important part of our security department. All right, because attack may happen from different sources. That can be an external threat, that can be an internal threat. So while we are focusing for that, we need to understand how these attack happens, what are the assets are there, how we can apply the security for that. So if I talk about the different teams, we'll see like what are those teams are there, what does it mean by the internal threat, what does it mean by the external threat, and everything. All right. So let's do understand. So when I talk about the cybersecurity, the most important thing is that we need to understand that either we work with any department, either you've been working for pen testing, either you've been working for cloud security, or you've been working for the security analyst, or you've been working as a security engineer, or you've been working as even for a physical security, if I talk about it. So whenever we talk about the security, the most important part of this, how does the security is designed? So the security is designed based on the CIA triad, which is a very important pillar for the security to be built. Now, when I say the confidentialities, right, what does it exactly means by that? It means like whatever the assets, whatever the information which have been getting passed between the computers that need to be have a proper encryptions. Either we've been getting access to the applications, either we have been doing the web applications transactions, or we've been going to access different services. So only the authorized person should be able to get an access to those services. That's the part we call as confidentiality. And if I talk about the integrity, it's like tampering. They should not be have any kind of tampering to the database. There should not be any kind of modification should be happens to the database. So they maintain different type of file hashes. They have a different sort of process that maintain the integrity for our data. So if somebody can modify those information, that will be considered as a lack of integrity. Then we have the availability because availability is also plays major roles in security. So we need to know that how the service should be available, what type of transactions happens, what type of informations have been getting access by an authorized person. So the data should be available for the person who are going to access the service or the data that comes on the availability. So based on these, where the security has been designed. Based on these, there are the different compliance policies. Either if I talk about the internal policy for an organization, either it can be the external policy. So based on these, the security systems is designed. We have, when I talk about it, to get exploit, there are the different processes are there. There are the different type of attacks happens by the hackers. So when we see that, when we are getting into the cybersecurity industry, we must know like what are the type of hackers will be there, what is exactly their job role will be there, what they perform. So if I talk about the ethical hackers, right, that will be considered as a white hat hacker. That will be like these are the good guys which always focus on security, which always see what type of transactions happens, what type of informations are processed, is that any type of vulnerabilities are there in the systems. So they're going to do this patch management. They always use their skills for the correct purpose. That is for the security purpose. To design the security to implement the policies. When I talk about the black hat hackers, these are the bad guys which always have an intentions to make an attack, find out the vulnerabilities and make the huge profit with them. And the gray hat hackers are their border between the white and black. We don't know what they're going to be doing. It can be like a cat on the wall, where it's going to be jumped. We don't have any idea about that. That will be considered as where we can consider that as the gray hat hackers. This is what the most of the process when we are seeing them. If we see some more detail about this, the white hat hackers are the good guys. These are the ethical hackers, which always use their hacking skills for defensive systems. They have a genuine license to focus on penetration testing. They never use their skills for illegal purpose. They always try to improve the defense for the security systems. The black hat hackers are the cyber criminals. They exploit the vulnerabilities for their personal gain. They have only one motive to make it huge profit with those attacks. They're gonna use different type of malwares. They're going to use different type of the social engineering method. They're going to gather the information. They do create the different type of malware. They go to the dark web. They purchase the malware to attack on a target systems. They're going to hack the bank, steal credit card, personal information, placing the malware on the target systems. And as I said you that the great gray hat hackers also been considered as an computer expert. They're going to disclose the security flaws to the public. That might be sometimes they go to the owner and say it's about those vulnerabilities. It's all depends upon the conditions and circumstances that they had. So reason either it can be an ethical or it can be unethical depending upon the conditions where they might make those skill sets. This is how the type of hackers will see. So when I say that, there are the team out there. We have a several team, right? So these teams can be considered as a general. We have a HR team, sales team, accounting team, construction team, marketing team, finance team, and so on. Those are the different departments. We have an IT team, which can be the developers. We can see the test engineer, the people who are there with creating the services, creating an applications that will be considered. We have something as an IT infrastructure that can be a system engineer, desktop engineer, network engineers, database engineers that can be considered as an IT infrastructure. Now comes to the backbone of any industry. That comes on ID security. So we have like IM team, identity access management team. We have like endpoint security team, vulnerability assessment team, network security team. So we're going to design the entire network. We're going to find out the vulnerabilities. We're going to protect the endpoints in the organizations which are getting connected. There are the different type of authorizations are required while they get an access to the systems. What level of access they require based on their job role, right? Where the IM team are there for granting the permission. Then we have the SOC team, the Security Operations Center. As a SOC analyst, we can say that. So these teams use a tool like SIM, SOC, threat intelligence. So these are very active team which is always focused on the security monitoring, the 365 days, 24 by 7. They are dedicated team which are going to monitor the different type of activities that is happening. So as you know, like when we see that any cyber attack if happen, let's say that if the cyber attack has happened, there are two processes. One, it is an because of internal, that can be an internal threat, as we know that, and also it can be happens most of time by also an external threat. Now, what exactly it means by the internal threat and external threat? So the internal threat are nothing but which have been done by because of lack of awareness, because of it can be intentionally also it happens sometimes, or it might be happens unintentionally, accidentally it is also happens by the team which are there inside the organization. Now if I talk about the external threat, that as we know that happens by an hackers which are going to attack us. So if we'll see that the coordinations between the team which are there internal the organizations when we are maintaining it, we need to be have a very clear straight away, focus on the activities what they are doing it. We must have an awareness training for them, what to do, what not to do with it, how they can be abide to the policies what we have created in the organization. Either it can be the internal, either it can be external policies that need to be get focused on. So let me give you one example related to the civil engineer. All right. So now what exactly the civil engineer will do? As we know very well that is there into the constructions, right? They construct the buildings, malls, like villas and so on. So while it's constructing this, as we know, there is required of getting interact with the several teams. That teams can be considered as like architect teams. We have the masons, we have tile workers, we can see the plumbers, electricians, painters, and so on. This can be considered they need to be have a proper interactions. They need to be have a proper direction, which according to the civil engineer is trying to execute the project. Because if there's a lack of communications happens with this team, As we know, like the security, the constructions will not happen. The plan, what they have, correct? Do you agree with that? Yes or no, everyone? So yes, so we know that, like the construction team will be there, like will be taking care of these, interacting with the entire team in order to do. Now, if I take you to this example within cybersecurity process, so let's do understand like how this it happens when we talk about related to the cybersecurity, what are the things is happening. So we know that if I relate these with the cybersecurity team, we have the cybersecurity experts, which have been focusing on all the activities, not only about the external threat, but also as an internal threat. What operations is performing by the HR team? Let's take example. What exactly the process is doing by the marketing team? What exactly doing by the network team? Is that anything that can be a vulnerable? Is that anything thing can be lead to be a cyber attack? So these are the team out there which have been working like the finance team and so on. So we as a SOC team, we're going to monitor the entire activities that has happened on these assets. Now, if you ask me like how we going to monitor, so for that, we have as we can see that we have like SIM tool that is our most important to know that. So as in security analyst, when we have been working, we have the SIM tool. So the SIM tools are going to collect the data. So they're going to collect the data from multiple IT assets. So what are those IT assets can be there? So these IT assets can be considered as endpoints. Now, endpoints are nothing but can be considered as workstations. So there are the different workstations where we are collecting the data. It can be a network. So they are the different network devices where we can see that we are collecting the data. It can be the firewall, it can be the routers, or it can be considered as switches and so on. That will be one of the example where I can say that we are collecting the data with that. And then we have something like cloud services as well. If we can see that there are the several cloud services we have it. We have a different type of databases that can be and considered as an assets. So we have the different type of IP addresses. We have different type of application in the organization which have been working. So this is all been considered as an assets. So we are collecting the data from these assets. Now, what type of data is that? So these data are nothing but in the form of events and logs. So there are every device will generate the logs based on the activities that perform. So there is required of integrations in order to onboard all the same operations to collect the data from these devices. Let me give you one example, a quick example to get you understand how does this data can be there. So for example, let's say that this is one of the tools where I have it, but okay, let me just give you one example. All right. So here comes to the one of the thing too that can be considered as an Splunk if I talk about it. So I'll be collecting the data from multiple sources. So what are these multiple sources can be? So these sources can be like cloud services. These sources can be like any assets like servers and so on. So if I go to the settings and if I can see the database here, so here I'm going to see that, right? That the data can come to the SIMs can be from the cloud services, it can be from the networking, it can be from the operating system, it can be getting from the security devices and so on. So these data comes in the form of logs here. So this is one of the SIM tools called as an IBM Curator, which is the most used tool in the industry. So how does this tool works? What type of data we collected? So we can see that if I click on these, this is at the dashboards where we're going to do the security monitoring here, the system monitoring, what type of the process. So there are the several type of dashboards out there that can be for the compliance, that can be for the applications offenses, It can be for the threat or more monitoring. There are the different type of offenses where we can see that here. So these offenses, when we are getting it, so that can be related to the certain activities, what happens in a particular system. So when I talk about these offenses, the offenses are generated based on the rules. So there are the several type of the rules need to be collected. So these rules can be considered in the form of event rules, that can be in the form of custom rules, it can be considered as a correlations rules and so on. So these are the rules where we can see that, and these rules has a different type of groups as we can see that. So there's a grouping method happens, like DDoS attacks, if I talk about the malware attack, if I talk about related to the compliance, related to the database, related to the authentications and so on. So there are the several type of the rules have been collected, created in order to detect any type of the activities when it is happening. So if I click on the log activities here, I can be able to see there are the several logs are coming. These logs are coming from multiple sources here. So we can be able to do the different type of filters here. So if I want to see last 24 hours what happened, last 3 days what happened, last 7 days what happened. So I can be able to see the entire system. I can understand what type of activities happen on these assets here, if you can see that. So let me group this. I can group this with the event name as well. So if I can group this as an event name, I can be able to see all those information. So here you can see that the information related to the malicious whatever the malicious activities is. Now, if we'll say that, okay, apart from that, if we going to filter any data here, let's say that for last 7 days, I want to see the login failures. That might be chances. Or I want to see some of the keywords that shows that certain malware happens or certain attack happens. So I can filter this data based on the different sources here. So there are multiple things are there which I might use in order to detect any type of activity. Let's say that if I'm going to be get selected something that related to the malware. So I can just select as a malware contain the keyword call as the malware here. The payload is contain the malware. So when I add this filter, it's going to give me the detail about whatever the logs that contains the malware. So these many logs which I have received here, and here you can see that the data is getting pulled here. So that is if exploit happens with the type of target, what type of systems, what type of the source IP, what are the source port, what are the destination IP, what are the destination port, what are the username. So there are the different type of filters that we're going to be see here. So if I can detect or if I want to get investigate to any type of these activities, if I can see that if I want to if I want to see here what type of activities is happening, what are the target destination, what are the source IP, what are the destinations IP, what are the source port, destination port, what type of information is contained here. So if you can see that here it says that multiple exploit malware type targeting a single destination. So it detected a destination attempting to be exploit using multiple type of attack from one or more sources here. So that might be considered as a DDoS attack, that can be and they may using certain type of pattern here. So there are investigation systems right there. Because of these investigation, we can take a proper incident response, like how we can coordinate with the different team, what type of things is happening, what type of activities is happening. Everything can be get detected here. So audit started, if I'll say that here. So we can see that this is another malware we got it here. So the keyword contain about here that that is the malware alert here. Are you able to see that here? So this is a malware alert and it has been giving certain type of the security IDs here where we can see what type of information that it might may exploit it here. Okay. So there are the number of features are there. We're going to see that whatever the activities that happens in the network. If I want to see that what type of packet is transferring, what type of data is there, so how does the traffic has been getting passes? If I want to see that the last 1 hour, what was the systems is done? What type of traffic is passes here? So we can see the source IP, source port, destination IP, destination port, like we can see that the source byte, and even though we can see what are I can group with the source IPs, I can group with the source port. So if I'm been sending the data from multiple source port, I can be able to see what are those ports are there. How does these ports have been working here? So I can put those, I can see that the information that related to this. This is how where we can do it. There are the several type of the reports are there which might may require. There are the several assets are there. If I click on the asset list, I can be able to see there are the multiple assets which are there on my systems here, which I've been monitoring the security for these assets. And here, if I can see that the reports, there are the several type of the security reports we require, the weekly reports, or we need to see what are the alerts happening, what type of informations are there. So these type of reports were gonna give me the clear picture about the activity that happens on the particular devices here. What type of the alerts are there, what type of threat this happens, and if you can see that entire information where we been able to grab. So these are the reports that are very useful for us to get analyze the entire system, what is happening, what are those source type, source point, and other information which we are getting. Now, this is the type of reports, and there are the different type of the controls we can be able to see that here. So these control regarding the update, internal management, we can see the network hierarchies. We can see that what type of log sources we have it. If I'll go down, I can see the log sources. I can do the different type of log sources intentions, what type of extensions I can apply for that. I can do the certain type of normalizations as well. So I can do the event customizations by using this different type of rigorous values here. So those are some of the part where we can find it, the file sources, flow sources, vulnerability assessment, and so on. So we're going to be have the complete hands-on, right from how we're going to work it. If we're going to add some supporting applications that can be the different security modules are there. It depends upon the requirement of the demanded for the organization's assets. So what type of assets we require to, how those applications exports can be maintained here. So what type of the major user behavior analytics, or any product with the where I can say that I can be used by using SOR, or if I'm using any type of sandboxes here, EDRs, if you can see that, that is also in the part of this one. So phishing attacks and many things, the integrations can be done, deployment process where we can say that it is all depends upon the informations what we got. So this is some of the areas as a security expert is that with these possibilities, what do you understand that here? Mr. Rafiq, Ita, Abdul, can you give me an acknowledge here? With these, tool, is that possible? Can we be able to see what are the activities that these users are performing? Correct or not?
Sorry, sir.
Is that possible? Is that so correct if I say that yes, with the same tool, we can maintain the security for these all assets? Yes or no?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Yes, Abdul, is that so clear? Abdul, Suleiman? Yeah. So this is are the possible ways where we can see. So if we see that in the organization there are several teams we have it. Like we can see the system team, we can see the network team, endpoint security team, network security teams. We have information security team. We can see the security operations centers like the SOC team. We can see the application developer team. There is database teams IT help desk. We can be able to see the cloud teams. We have virtualization team. We can see the vulnerability assessment team. So there is identity access management team. They are the different IT departments where can be there in the organization. So what exactly they do it? What are the job responsibilities? In a very simple way, if I'll talk about the system team or the server team, so they are into providing the support to the desktops and laptop issues. We know very well. This will be considered as an IT technician, or it can be considered as an IT guy, which have been taking care of our operating systems that can be related to the Macs, Linux. It can be related to the Windows, or it can be the any hardware approach, or it can be any applications, or there are some configuring different type of services. So this is how the system can work. So the network team, if I talk about it, so the network team, which is there into the planning and designing the entire network architectures, they'll see what type of topologies are you required, what type of the network architectures are there, how the data get flow, what are we have the private network, we have the DMZ demutualized zone, or we can see that trusted network to untrusted network, how those devices are connected, what type of policies, what type of controls, what type of the requirements are there to design this network. This is other person. So we see that there are installations and maintenance process are there with the NOC, we call it the Network Operation Center. So they are into taking care of the fault management system. If anything happens, there are the team which have been taking care of it. So while designing the network, we have the routers, switches. We can see access points. We can see the network with the cables, they are, we can use a different type of the wired and wireless connections while working on it. There are different type of access control also need to be get implemented, right? So this is all from scratch. We're going to discuss everything about what is required in networking, how does it work, what are the components are there, what type of the data get exchanged and so on. So if we'll see that, apart from that, we have the endpoint security. Now they have been going to protect all the endpoints in the network. Endpoints, I mean to say that it can be your laptop, computer, desktop, smart devices, printers that connects to the corporate network, right? So we need to be implement and configure all the ESS. It's called as the endpoint security solutions, where we're going to see the antivirus, host-based firewall. We have different type of intrusion prevention systems. We can see that disk encryptions. We have DLP technology. So there are the different vendors. In fact, if I say you about this, right? So if I give one example, let me give you one example. If I'll show you that the DLP, right, how it will be get implemented, what are the things that's there. So if I show you something, a list of DLP vendors, let's say that. So this is are the technologies where we're going to see that. So it can be, there are many things are there, like force point, digital gradients. We can see the semantic. We can see Palo Alto. So this is all are nothing but which have been going to implement as the DLP technology. So as a security expert, when we suggest the security, it depends upon the requirement where we need to add it. A host-based firewall is nothing but on my computer. If I'll go to the control panel, I can see something called as a systems and security. If I click on this, I can see that Windows Defender firewalls. So these firewalls, when I clicking on this, if I'll go to the advanced security, I can be able to see there are the different type of the rules can be get built up here. So that can be the inbound rules, that can be the outbound rules. It also says what type of the rules I can create it. If it can be created based on the programs, that can be based on the code, based on the predefined pattern. It can be the customs, right? Whatever it might be. So those will be considered as different type of the host based firewall can control the transactions, which is happens with the particular endpoints here. We have something called as the EDRs. It's been considered as the endpoint detections when we are talking about endpoint detections and response. This is nothing but the next generation antivirus. Like it's not just most of the antiviruses work based on the signature. They have the database. When we install the agent on a particular endpoint, they're going to compare all those signatures with the database. If the signature matches, then we report as a malware. But if it is an unknown malware out there, then it won't be able to detect it. So in this case, we have the EDR. It not only just able to detect known malware, but also the capability of taking care of unknown malware as well as the users' capabilities, what type of activities they are doing. User behavior analytic also can be done by using these endpoints, here, which is the part of the security. Then we come to the network security, installing, configuring, and maintaining all the network security solutions. That can be like firewalls. We are installing the intrusion prevention system, web gateways, email gateways, wireless securities, web services. That is a web applications firewall. It can be on a device. It can be on the virtual part. There will be a different cloud-based services are there, cloud-based firewall, cloud-based intrusion systems that can be getting added, which is part of security. We have another team called the information security team. Now we have certain thing process called as an audit. Now this is comes very important role for any organization. Information security teams are most important team which I focus on. Why? Because these things are dealing with the regularities, the data protections laws regularities can be there. So they're going to drafting the different type of security policies. They're going to check the list about what are the list of requirements, what are the lists are there for to maintain the security, what are the standard according to the NIST, according to the ISO 27001, or it can be related to the PCI DSS, Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, or it can be related to the GDPR, HIPAA, and so on. So here they do the evaluations on the different type of controls. They're going to see like what type of endpoints are there, what type of activities happens, what type of the controls they require, and so on. So that is the most important part again. Then they do the drafting in the security policies. They're into conducting the awareness training. They're into adherence to the regularity compliance. In generally, we call it the governance, risk, and compliance. So they're into the business management, activity control, auditing, and everything, which has been taken care of. It awareness training for the people, what to do. This is how the information security will work. Then we have the vulnerability assessment team, which have been going to use to scan the network or application to identify any vulnerabilities out there. So they use some automated tool like Tenable tool, Nessus, Callis. So where are going to give the report, and that report need to be get understand, need to be worked with the various team to fix those vulnerabilities. The process of fixing is called as the patch management team. So in a very simple way, where the vulnerability assessment team are. Identity access management team, which are creating the identity access rights of the peoples, like employees, or it can be considered as like we have different type of customers, what type of the rights they have, what type of the permissions they have. So it means like the IAM team which are there for the user accounts, they maintain the passwords, they grant the access and so on. So that's just comes as the identity access management team. It works on the three things we call as a identifications, authentications, authorizations, and accountability. So we'll discuss some sort of more detail while coming into the authorization, like how does it just happen. Now comes to the main team called as a SOC team, the Security Operations Center. What exactly they do? So they're going to monitor, detect, and investigate different type of the cyber threat, and they're going to respond to those threats. So when any incident has been detected, they investigate. First, they need to validate them. Is it the true positive or the false positive? If it is a true positive, then what sort of actions they need to be created? So they monitor, they detect, they investigate, and they respond to the cyber threat. That's how it works. So we can see that they work with the different SMEs. We have the different subject matter expert team for remediate the security incident. So whenever any incident arises, the ticket will be get opened and the case need to be get investigated. So this is how they have been using of the same tool, which I have just briefed you how this tool works. We have discussed about there are the different features for that like SOC security or architect automation response. We have like threat intelligence tools. We have analysis tools. So the SOC team, which provide the 360-degree security for an organization. So how does it implement it? What is the reason of it? So I would take next 10 minutes to explain you about this, which is very important. The evolution of SOC. It means like why the SOC is most important part in the organizations while been working. So I'm going to talk about why the SOC is discovered, what happens when there was no SOC. So let's discuss in past. In the past, there are some different attack happened. Stuxnet, it was been considered as the first cyber weapon, and which is trying to design, bring down the nuclear power plant for Iran. It means like Stuxnet was the malware which is created by the Israel and America, which has been designed to put down the Iran's nuclear power plant. But this is our very big services. They are doing a big project, but there's no dedicated security there. Not only this, if we'll see some more detail, if I talk about it, the major cyber attack happens in the past. Like Sony Pictures have faced an attack, Yahoo faced an attack, Visa faced an attack, Subway faced an attack, Target faced an attack. So if we can see that there are there are many attack happens to these big top MNCs even. So with that, everybody is worried about it. Who is safe internet? When they're getting an access to the services, who's safe on the internet when there is a huge losses is happening, there's a different type of attack. So they start doing the research, they find out the reason why this attack is happening. So they got some valid reasons here. We'll see that. Some of the finding is that whenever the attack happens, company will take huge time to detect those attacks. Nearly 6 to 7 months. That will be a very a very big loop point for an organization. And also, nobody is there to track anything. It's like there was no monitoring team out there. So here we can see that there were no monitoring team were there. So at this point, we can see that when the attackers are initiate something, so there will be no team were there to detect it, right? So there when indication attack would happen, the attacker will give, but nobody is there to focus. Then we see that whenever the attack happens, it takes almost 70% of time the attacks are being detected by an external entity. Now, what does it mean by that? I would like to bring you with a very simple example. I request you to please unmute and answer me this, any one of you, whatever you think. Let's imagine a situation, there is some illegal transaction happens to your account. Somebody have taken certain, transaction from your account. At this point time, you have not shared the OTP, you have not scanned any code, you have not given your credit card, debit card, even though some illegal transactions happens on your account. Somebody have taken certain amount from your account. What would be your first step here? What are you going to be doing?
Contact to bank
So
immediately.
we are calling the bank, right? So it means like
Yeah.
who we are to the bank. Is we are the security employee?
Customer
No.
service.
We are just a customer to the bank. We are the outside, right? We are the outsider. Correct or not?
Yeah.
So we are the external entity to the bank to tell that something is happened. Now, what bank exactly doing? So let's go inside and see. The banks start doing the research through which channel the amount has been withdrawn here. Is that the customer error or they have the vulnerabilities? Correct? Yes or no?
Yes.
So with that information, we got to know that whenever any cyber attack happens, whenever any attack has taken place, the people are to inform, then they get to know about the vulnerability. They don't have a dedicated team to understand about the vulnerabilities, to monitor anything that is going suspicious. For that, somebody's report, they get to know that. So with this, we got to know that whenever the cyber attack happens, whenever it is executed, it takes long time to detect. Almost 6 to 7 months to detect an attack. And initially, the attackers are indicating something, but nobody is there to notice that. This was the problem here. The root cause analysis says that lack of visibility is here. For this, what we need? For these, we need the security need to be get monitored. So that need to be have a dedicated team that 24 by 7, 365 days. The team need to be get monitored all those assets and understand what type of transactions is happening. So security need to be get monitored and based on that the actions will be taken. Now comes the main important thing is that if the security monitoring, what should be monitored? That's the big question. So here we need to monitor all the activities. Now, how those activities can be get monitored? In the form of logs. There are the different type of logs come. These logs are nothing but the events or something which is happens on the system here. If I'll go to the event viewer on my computer here, If you can see that these locks, the Windows locks, if I'll talk about it will be related to your applications. It can be related to your security setup system. So whatever the activity we perform, that have been generating in the form of logs. So these logs are very important in order to see the activities. We must collect this data. We need to analyze this data and take an actions based on it. So whatever the activities happens to the application, whatever the activities happens to the security, whatever that happen to the setup systems and all things that we have been going to get the log something like this here. So this is can be considered like there are the several log sources, and if you can see that this is a security event where we can see that the Microsoft Windows security, the event ID is a 468 and the process ID and so on. So there are like several type of things which we can describe. So these logs are generating from multiple sources. These sources can be considered as a system servers. It can be like security solutions, or it can be considered as network devices where we collecting the data here. So these data, when we are collecting from these multiple assets, what we are doing, we need to analyze. The challenge is that how we going to analyze because they are not easy to read and they are the different standards, right? If I'll say that we have a multiple asset example, we have seen the asset list here, right? So let's say that I have the endpoint devices, I have the network devices, I have a firewall, router, switches, cloud services. Every device have their own syntax of correcting the data. So the data, the event logs are generating based on their syntax. I mean to say that, if say that in a very simple way, we have two machines. One is Windows machine and another is a Linux machine. Okay. So whatever the activities perform on those devices are being generated in the form of logs, and these logs are not standard. It's like those logs are not similar. Windows have their own syntax, Linux machines have their own syntax, correct? So, like these, the applications have their own syntax, firewalls have their own syntax. So, these logs are not standard, they are different. Example, you can see that this is a login failure for the Linux, and this is a login failure for the Windows machine, which is completely different here. We can't be able to understand what is these logs are there, what are like the information is contained. So an account get failed to get login, but what is the reason? What does the things is happens? So for that, we have one solution here. We'll tell you that. But before that, this log's not in a small volume. It depends upon the organization size. The logs can be there. Example: 25 million logs per day, 300 logs per second. It's not 300 actually. The logs can be huge. It can be the 1 lakh plus as well. It can be 50,000. It can be 60,000. It can be anything. It depends upon the asset list. We call something called as the EPS, event per second. So on per second, one device, how many events are generating? So total asset list based on that, how many events we are receiving. So that need to be get calculated, and based on that, the process will be done. So it means like we require some special tool here in order to see this. That's called as a SIM. SIM is nothing but the security information event management. That can be like Splunk, IBM Curator, Logarithms, Azure Sentinel. We have there are many tools out there which can be used as a SIM. So they correlate those. They're going to give us the notifications if anything goes wrong. So what is SIM? SIM is going to collect the data from these multiple sources in the form of logs. So the SIM is going to give us the suspicious activity based on the rules which earlier I showed you that. That can be a malware rule, that can be authentication rules, that can be any suspicious activities. It can be a custom rule set. So the same tool will collect the data, from these multiple sources, which is not able to, as we know, like if I'll say the very simple way, the problem we are facing that we are collecting this data from multiple assets, which is not readable, which is not understandable. The root cause is that we can't understand that. For that, we have the solutions called as the SIM. The SIM is the process where we are collecting the data, we're going to analyze. But now comes an important thing is that how are we going to implement this? Let's take an example here. I will give you one simple example here in a real life analogy. If you see the problem here, the person met with an accident and his life can be at risk. The reason why? Because simple way we can see that this person is not wearing the helmet. And the solution is to wear the helmet and follow the safety measures. But if we request the people to do this, to wear this helmet or follow the rules, the people are not going to do that based on the request. For that, we have one special department, that is the rules enforcement, that can be considered as, like, the person, as in the police, as we know, like, a RTO, or the Department of Motor Vehicles, or we can see the driver license vacancy agency. It depends on country wise, like, we call differently. If you're not going to follow the rules, you're going to pay the fine for that. So this is what, like, the main thing where we need to understand that, right? We need to understand that how does it is happening, what things is need to be done here. So the same way, if I compare with the security here, the cybersecurity rules enforcements are the regularity compliance. There is some industry best practice. The design, the, like, the security system according to the NIST standard and so on. So that example, like PCI DSS, GDPR, HIPAA. So these make security monitoring are mandatory. So this is how it's happening. So that the make use of the same tools are called as the security monitoring stock room, and the person who work under this is called as a SOC analyst. So we're going to discuss that in detail and step by step process from scratch to advance. I believe everybody is clear with this, right? Is that so? If you have any sort of doubts, please
This
feel free to ask me. Yes, Mr. Rafi.
this class is already finishing last week or no, sir, Thursday.
Thursday, sorry.
Thursday or same class will you have to
Yes, it
explain.
was it was just repeated because of some new people will go. That's the reason.
Okay, okay,
Okay, from now we are going to
okay,
clear. So this is just an
okay, sir.
introduction towards, like, to get understand what things is happening
Yeah,
right now, how it would be. All right. So is that so
okay,
clear,
sir.
everybody in here? If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. All right, so that's all for today's session, guys. Thank you very much. The next sessions, which I'm going to be start mostly with the networking concept, which is as from scratch, and that session will get start once you do the enrollment. So my team will be there to contact you and do the process if you're interested. So we have already
Okay,
somebody are in. So it was just an repeated session for the people who are new to this. Okay. So okay, then, onboard it and we'll
the
do
next
it.
session will be same time, sir, tomorrow.
Sorry?
The next class will be same time tomorrow.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Okay,
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
okay, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Bye, Suleiman. Bye, Abdul. Thank you.